I played tennis, was an athlete, and I went from that to selling drugs. And I was looking for a way to get out the ghetto.
At one point, you were reportedly making $3 million a day.
Not every day.
Hey, what would you say your average was if you had to average?
Or at least $1 million every day.
Wow.
I'm not the same person that went in prison. I didn't come out the same way. I read over 300 books while I was gone.
If you had to recommend just 3 that everyone should read.
Once you read those 3 books, you got all the principles to do whatever you want to do in the world.
You were essentially homeless, and then you came into this t-shirt idea. What were you thinking when Joe Rogan first suggested it?
He said, the real Rick Ross is not a rapper, and I thought it was the corniest in the whole world, but I kept an open mind.
What's good, everybody? It's your guy, JoJo Simmons, and this is the For Good podcast, where we focus on the good, never the bad, where we're measured on what we do and not what we have. Today, I'm sitting down with the legendary Freeway Rick Ross, a man who turned into the drug trade in the 80s because there weren't many options, making over $3 million a day before it all came crashing down. After serving more than 20 years in prison, he came out with a new mindset and a new mission. Today, we talk about what happens when you know better and you decide to do better, not just for yourself, but for your community. From surviving the crack era to showing up for the next generation, Ricky's story is one of taking responsibility, redemption, and relentless vision. Let's get into it, everybody. Freeway Rick Ross. Thank you for coming on here, brother.
I appreciate you for having me on, man. Thank you. I love that introduction, too.
Oh, no problem. Us over here in the universe in 3 is 4, we give every guest a proper introduction because we're very intentional on who we have on this podcast and who we talk to and people that are really inspiring. And you were somebody that's super inspiring. Very excited to have this conversation. Was super excited when your name came across the desk that I'll be sitting down with Freeway Rick Ross. It's an honor to have you here. So we'll get into the questions. I won't keep you all day because I know how we're all pretty busy, but we're gonna get it going. So let's talk about
all right, let's do it.
Life before and after prison. So you've talked about how growing up in South Central Los Angeles, there weren't many options, and how path to financial freedom. What was the moment you realized that you were all in on selling drugs?
Well, when I first started, I never saw any drugs before. I would be what they call a square.
Okay.
I played tennis. Was an athlete, had never smoked a cigarette, had never smoked weed, never drunk a beer. You know what I'm saying? I was like a square, really. And I went from that to selling drugs. One of my friends called me one day. I felt like I was down on my luck, because I couldn't read or write, so I couldn't get my scholarship to college.
Wow.
And I was looking for a way to get out the ghetto. And he called me and he showed me drugs. And when I first got it, I didn't believe what he said. He had something that was so small that you would never believe that it was worth $50. And he was like, "This is worth $50." And I said to myself, "Man, if this is worth $50, I'm finna get rich." So my first sale didn't go well. I got beat out of my first sale, but I was determined to figure out if that was what I was going to be doing. So it probably took me about 2 months before I finally got it going to where I said, you know what? I know what I'm doing now, a little bit.
Wow, that's crazy. So you were not even dealing with drugs, never did a drug. You were a tennis player. You were what you say square, and you happen to see a way out, basically, and a way to make money and a way to support yourselves and others around you and say, you know what? I'm seeing the money in this. I'm not really looking at the other side of it.
Absolutely. And you know what, too? And I say this when I go to schools and stuff, when I talk to the kids, I talk about, the commercials always have this strange guy that come up on you and try to give you drugs. And I'm saying, no, it don't happen like that. It's usually a friend, an uncle, a dad, a brother, a sister, a mom or a dad that introduces people to drugs for the first time. It's not some stranger that they don't know because, if a stranger come up on most people, they ducking them, they trying to get out the way.
Right.
So it's somebody that you trust. And it was somebody that I trust, that I love. Right. And, he was like a big brother to me. And he's the one that introduced me to drugs for the first time.
Wow. So at one point, you were reportedly making $3 million a day. What does that kind of money?
Not every day. Not every day.
Okay.
It was, maybe 4 or 5 times a month.
Wow. So what would your average? What would you say your average was if you had to average it?
or at least $1 million every day.
Wow. So making that much money a day and in those times, what did that kind of money do to someone that never had anything like yourself? Like, what did that do to you? How did that make you feel?
Well, it gave me a sense of being. I became from being a nobody to a superstar. One time I had a young girl come up to me and she was like, "Man, you like Michael Jackson in the hood."
Wow.
And this is when Thriller was out.
What? Wow.
Yeah, she was like, they talk about Michael Jackson and then so it was like unbelievable. And this is before, crack had a bad name. At
Right.
that time, there was no crackheads. People wasn't strung out. They were smoking, but nobody knew what was to come.
Right. Right. So then everything kind of changed in '96. You were sentenced to life in prison under the three strikes law. What was going through your mind during that time?
Oh man. I was wondering, was this the way my mom's son was gonna wind up, in
Wow.
prison for the rest of his life, without the possibility of parole, that my kids would wind up growing up without a dad. And one of the things that I always said is that I wanted to be there for my kids because my dad wasn't there for me. And then when I look back at it, I was like, you did the same thing to your kids that your dad did to you, uh, even though mine was a little different. He could have came and seen me. I couldn't go and see my kids, but I voluntarily committed a crime that put me in the same position.
Yeah. So that's very interesting. You know what I mean? And I think that obviously, at your highest of highs, you didn't think of that, but once that kind of came down on you, you had that time to really sit with your thoughts and really understand, what you were going through.
Well, you in a cell by yourself 23 hours a day. Nobody to talk to,
Right.
really nothing to do but sit back and contemplate, you know, look at your life, analyze yourself, analyze the people around you. These are the kind of things that you do if you stay in a cell for 23 hours a day for 3 years.
Right.
You do that for 3 years. You've done a lot of thinking, a lot of contemplating, and so many things have run through your life because there's no more future.
Right.
So the only thing that you can think about is the past, and you just analyze your past.
Yeah. I think you said something super interesting earlier in the conversation when you said that having money and access to money gave you access to education because you were somebody that didn't know how to read, really didn't know how to write. You weren't very educated, but once you were able to obtain money, you said that you were able to educate yourself. You think that having money really helped you educate yourself better, educate yourself more, give you a little bit more business acumen?
Oh, absolutely. Well, it puts you in the room with people that you wouldn't normally be able to be in the room with.
Right. Wow.
Even tennis. When I look back at my life, tennis put me in rooms that my brothers who didn't play tennis didn't get in those same rooms. So they didn't have the same mentality that I had about life.
Mm.
So exposure definitely changes the mindset and influences a person.
I love that. Exposure changes the mindset and influences the person. That's powerful. Now,
Absolutely.
you've once said nobody told me I could have used that same discipline to build something else I just didn't know. What would that something else have been for you if someone had helped you see your own potential? Would it be tennis? Because I hear you speak about tennis a lot.
Well, now I know I could do anything.
Mm.
You know, movies, records. I've helped numerous artists get into the record business. I helped guys get into the NFL, really the NBA. I had a couple guys that I assisted got into the NBA. So there's no limit to what these skills can be used for. Right now I'm doing boxing. I'm in a situation with boxing that I really believe that I'll wind up being the key to boxing in the near future,
Yep.
to where if you're doing boxing, you're gonna come see Rick Ross. The marijuana industry,
Mm.
I got a dispensary. I went around the country and helped states open up their dispensary licenses. Detroit, Chicago, Pennsylvania. I was there at the cutting edge when they were talking about going legal. The senators who wrote the bills called me down to speak about social equity and why blacks and minorities should be allowed to be in the business, and the business should be affordable so that they
Right.
could get into the industry. So I'm working on my own movie right now about my life story, and I'm one of the producers. So I'm hands on. I mean, and I realized that I always had all of this stuff inside of me, that I could have been doing all of this had I only knew that it was possible.
So a two-part question. First of all, how does it feel to be legally selling drugs, which they call cannabis a drug, right? From going through so many legal issues with selling drugs in the past. Well, how's that feeling for you? And like seeing the transition of how weed or cannabis is being treated now. I know back in the day when you were selling, weed wasn't as powerful, but it was still something that was frowned upon, and you can get a lot of time for. How does that feel to be in the
Absolutely.
cannabis business?
It feels wonderful. It's a
Exactly.
great business to be in. When you can be actually assisting people in their mental.
Right.
Because some people use it recreation, some people use it mentally.
Yep.
But just to be able to assist people and put people in a space that makes them comfortable is wonderful. Anytime that you can help somebody else, it makes you feel good.
Yeah. I love hearing all the things you have going on now and all the things that you've worked on. But when you didn't have that access to the money, and like I said, knowing that you could have used this same discipline to be anything else in the world, back in the day, what would you think you would have been if you had somebody behind you telling you to go the other way? Would it have been tennis?
Definitely tennis would have been one. If I knew what I knew now with tennis, about tennis, I probably would have been a tennis pro. Now I know to add a little more, to my push.
Yeah.
I was pushing good, but I could have added a little more to the push.
Right. Right.
But I probably would have been, a Walmart or, uh, I mean, if I wouldn't have went to prison, no telling where I would have been.
Yeah.
Probably invested in Walmart, Nike, or Microsoft, or some of those companies that I know about now. Because I'm always right now looking for the next opportunity.
Were those companies that you knew about back in the day went before you went in jail, or are these just companies that you're seeing that are big now and you're like, I could have probably
Yeah,
researched
they're
it?
big now, but at one time I had them kind of money that if I would have put 100,000 in Nike,
You'd have
it
been up.
would be worth 100. It'd be
Yeah.
$100 million right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you look at and I used to blow $100,000.
Right. I know it. Oh, don't I know it?
So when you look back, you'd be like, wow, had you not, if I would have been who I am right now. I mean, but I don't really look at the past so
Right.
much no more. Because I already analyzed my past, and while I was in prison, I studied. I'm not the same person that went in prison. I didn't come out the same way. I read over 300 books while I was gone.
Mm.
And right now I'm looking for the next big opportunity, the next startup, the next young genius that's coming around. And I want to be there to assist them in their journey.
Dope. So, speaking of young geniuses that's coming around and assisting them in their journey, what advice would you have for someone right now who is sitting on skills that they don't even recognize are valuable yet?
I would tell anybody, follow your dream. Don't allow other people to kill your dream, because it's your dream and nobody's going to see your dream the way you see it.
Right.
And you have to be the one that makes sure that your dream come to fruition.
Right. Agreed. So, you learned to read at 28 while in prison. What pushed you to
Yeah.
take that first step while you were in prison to learn to teach yourself how to read?
Well, guys were telling me that I shouldn't depend on my lawyer to get me out.
Wow.
And this is a lesson that I teach when I go speak at schools. I tell the young people that the guy told me something like this. I'm gonna try to paraphrase it. I know I ain't gonna get it right. He said, "Do your lawyer have other clients?" And I said, "Yes." "Does he put your case in front of all of his other clients?" And my answer to him was no. He said, "Does he have kids?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Does he put your case in front of his kids?" And I said, "No." He said, "Does he have a wife?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Do he put your case in front of his wife?" I said, "No." He said, "Your case should be so important to somebody that it's more important than all those things that I just announced to you." And
Wow.
when we left that conversation and I contemplate what he said, and what he was telling me is that somebody was me. That the only person in the world that would put my case in front of everything was me. and that's what I did. And I started studying and studying, and boom, it just came to me.
That's dope. That's inspiring. That's amazing that you took that turn when you realized the only person that can save you is yourself, and you took that
Yes.
initiative and saved yourself.
And
So
I use that with everything that I do now. I take that same mentality because I understood when I sold drugs, I put it all on the line.
right.
You know, I used to carry a gun.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in prison, I was asking myself, why was you carrying a gun? Oh, because somebody might try to rob you and kill you. So what that told me is that I was putting my life on the line every single morning that I got up and went outside my door and sold drugs.
Wow.
My life was literally on the line. And
That's scary.
and 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 not just my life, but my freedom as well.
You told me you read over 300 books while incarcerated. If you had to recommend just three that everyone should read, what would they be and why?
Everybody know those books. I done told everybody in the world about those 3 books, but
I want to
you
hear
know,
him. I want
people.
to hear him on the For Good podcast. I want to hear him, OG. I want that. I want that content too, OG.
All right, I'm gonna give it to you. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Get the original version.
One,
Richest Man in Babylon by
two.
George Classy. Get that original version. As a Man Think or As a Woman Think by James Allen. Once you read those 3 books, you got all the principles to do whatever you want to do in the world. What I found out is all those books that I read, everybody used those principles that those 3 books talked about.
Dope. Appreciate that. I know you said it before, but I just wanted to get that. I may have to read those books as well. I haven't read any of those,
Well, if
but
you read them, then if you go read them, it'll be good because ain't none of your listeners gonna listen to them.
nah, they will. My listeners are different, man. My listeners always want to learn. My listeners always want to be educated. My listeners always want to be uplifted as they uplift others. So they definitely are going to be jotting it down.
Well, that's good because you know when I go to these black schools and I tell these kids about these books and I look for a reaction. You know, I spoke at Brown University one time in the
Mhm.
auditorium. It was full of kids. You know, they didn't look like us though. And when I told them about those 3 books, I saw almost the whole audience reach behind their back into their backpack and pull out pens and papers and wrote the names down. And when I go to black schools and I say the same thing, I don't get that reaction.
Wow.
And it'd be kind of sad that, you know, they would have the opportunity. If somebody would have told me about those books, how valuable those books were when I was coming up, my life would have been totally different.
I hear that, and it is sad that young black men, young black kids, not all the time do they feel like they're listening, but with growth and age comes education, and trust and believe they're gonna remember that conversation you had with them, and they may not implement that now, but they may implement that in the future. So never give up on talking to these young black kids. They may seem like they're not listening, but they listening, and some of them they are knuckleheads, but they get it right and they get it straight. So like I see that too in some places that it seems like black kids are just uninterested in education or they're uninterested in hearing something that can truly help them. But it's just that they got so many things going on, I think, is that they just are straight narrow on how to survive, right? That day. But trust me, when I say they hear you, I think every young black kid hears when we lecture. Like I remember being young and my dad lectured me every day and I didn't like it at those times. But now I implement and I say all those quotes that my dad told me as a kid that used to piss me off, that used to make me mad, that used to make me feel like, man, what does this even mean? And now I just use it in every day of my life. So trust and believe when you're talking to these kids, they may not seem like they're listening, but they listening, Ricky. They listening.
All right,
So
all right.
we speaking about books. So you said your book, Freeway Rick Ross, The Untold Autobiography, is almost like a how-to manual. Not to glamorize the lifestyle, but to show what comes with it. What was the writing process like, and
Absolutely.
what did writing it teach you about yourself?
Well, like I said, I was in prison. I had a life sentence without the possibility of parole. And I had read an article about Tookie's book. And I thought that if Tookie did a book on gangbanging, then I should do a book on selling drugs. And as I was writing the book, I was also reading those 3 books that I was telling you about. So those books started to influence my writing a lot.
Right.
This book was going to be a letter to young black people who may be thinking about going into the drug business or just be thinking about doing business, period. And I tried to put my mentality down of how I was able to take literally $125 and my partner had 125 and run it up to where we was making $3 million a day sometimes. So it's kind
Wow.
of like my letter, to the streets, oh, I ain't gonna never get to see you, but this is my letter to you.
I love it. You give back to the streets. You give back of saying you don't have to go this route, but if you do go this route, this is what comes with it. I love that, and it is needed, so people can understand what comes with that life. Um, I want to talk
Absolutely.
about you coming home because obviously I don't want to talk about you being incarcerated the whole time because you're not incarcerated anymore and you are home and you have been doing great things. So when you came home, you were essentially homeless and had $200 to your name, and then you came into this T-shirt idea. Can you take us back to that moment? What were you thinking when Joe Rogan first suggested it, and how did it all happen?
I was pissed off. I was like, if you respect me so much, you should have gave me, a bag. Give me
Right,
some working capital. You need some working capital out here, man. So when I told him I was doing bad, I was telling him because, I'm looking like, man, you on TV, you got all this stuff going on. Throw a brother a bone,
right,
You know what I'll do with a bone.
right,
Uh, so I didn't really want no T-shirt idea,
right.
but I stayed open minded and didn't know how I was gonna start a T-shirt. Like how the fuck I'm gonna start a T-shirt. So I'm walking down the street and this young kid came up to me, young white kid, and I didn't know who he was. I didn't know he was like one of the top T-shirt designers in the world. And he was like, "Man, I heard you on Joe Rogan, and I got a great T-shirt idea for you." And he said, "The real Rick Ross is not a rapper." And I thought it was the corniest in the whole world. But I kept an open mind. I said, "Okay, I'm listening." And he told me that he would print the T-shirt up and do everything, and all I had to do was just come there and take a picture in it. And I jumped on the opportunity.
Dope. So that one shirt turned into $188,000. What did that feel like, and what did that teach you about your own value?
Well, I hustled that T-shirt though. I would stand in front of gas stations and supermarkets. And I mean, I did just like I did, because I already had my crack experience. So I already knew how to go
Mhm.
straight to the people.
Right.
And I took it straight to the people. And, it just started to sell. And then I thought about what if I go back to Joe and tell him I did what he told me to do. And I did that. And he put the T-shirt on camera and it just went crazy.
Super dope. So now you speak across the country to mentor the youth and support reentry programs. Can you walk us through the work that you're doing today and what drives that work?
Well, I think that young people like myself, I wish I would have had me, when I was coming up,
Right.
being in the mindset that I'm in now. I know my life would have been different. So I try to go around just to give them a touch of, because I usually I'm only with the kids like 45 minutes. So I go around them and try to touch them just in 45 minutes, and hopefully I can, you know, wake some up within them to let them know that they're great, that they're special, and that they can compete with anybody.
Yeah.
All they have to do is because I used to believe that to be smart, one day you pray hard and one day you wake up and you're smart. Well, I found out that's not the case. You have to get in those books, you have to study,
Yeah.
you have to analyze, and those are the things that make people smart.
Yeah.
So I try to transfer those lessons to other young people who might be going down the same path that I went down.
What are some of the biggest misconceptions about people coming home from prison?
Well, that they believe that most people coming home from prison are lazy. Uh, they lie. They steal. Um, but drug dealers are a little different. Drug dealers are not the normal prisoner.
Right.
Drug dealers when they go to prison, they went to prison because they was trying to make some money.
Right.
And selling drugs is a business, even though it's not a legal business, but it's still a business in itself. And if you can run a successful drug business, you can be a great worker.
So everybody talks about reentry and all that, but you've been somebody that actually came home from prison and you know what this looks like. So what does real reentry support look like to you? What does somebody need to come home and fully get re-entered into the world?
we should have a system set up where people come out of prison, they have a place to stay, a stable place to stay. They got clothes, they have transportation, just enough time to get reacclimated back into society. Because you come home, um, I came home to a mess. My family was in shambles. Brothers were sleeping in garages and staying with women they couldn't stand. Just so they could have a roof over their head. My mom was behind on her house note. She had took out
That's
one of
when you
those.
came home.
Yeah, that's what I came home to.
Wow, after making all that money and then serving all that time, you came home to nothing.
Yeah, to nothing.
Wow. Wow. That just shows you like what that life really does. So you would say that just shelter, food, and an opportunity, that's what real reentry support looks like to you?
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you ain't got that, it ain't real reentry.
Yeah.
You're really setting them up for to go back to what they know. Because when a person runs into a bump in the road, the first thing they do is go back to their old habits.
Mhm. But if they have an opportunity, then they won't. They'll be able to see different and do different.
Correct.
Right. I think we spoke a lot about your past in this interview, and I kind of want to talk about the next generation towards the end of this interview for you. You credit your success then and now to discipline. How did your experience as a tennis player shape the way you approach life and business?
Oh, it helped me out tremendously because when I started selling drugs, I noticed that the other drug dealers weren't disciplined. They didn't put in the time. They would go out and make enough money to go to the movies, to put gas in the car, to buy the jewelry. When I started selling drugs, my goal was to accumulate as many points as I could. Like in tennis. In tennis, you want to win every single point. You don't want your opponent to win a point.
Right.
And that's the way that I approached the drug business. I didn't want nobody else to win a point.
I like that. So it's safe to say you used your sport to relate to whatever you do in life. That's dope. Um,
Absolutely. Still today.
that's what's up. That's what's up.
You know,
You,
I'm vegan.
I'm
I'm
listening.
vegan. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I don't gamble. I live a simple life. No big cars. Everything that I do is to win.
Yeah, yeah. Just like in tennis, no losing, no love for nobody, no love, right?
Exactly.
There you go. I know a little bit of tennis stuff. I played some tennis. My daughter plays tennis, so I know a little bit of
Yeah.
the technology. Yeah, she's working on it. She's working on it. She's working on it.
Yeah. My
Uh,
12-year-old daughter, she plays as well.
dope, dope. Maybe we'll get our daughters together, and your daughter could teach mine a thing or two about it. She's still learning.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah. We can do that.
So you've seen firsthand how systemic barriers keep people trapped. What do you think needs to change on a policy or community level to make a difference?
Well, I think we got to start educating ourselves. I think everybody should pick up those 3 books and learn those principles and apply those principles to their lives. I mean, those principles alone would start to change our community immediately.
Dope.
You know, because I host a lot of parties and clubs, and I watch our people throw away tens of thousands of dollars, on champagne and bottles and just stuff that has no real value. Something that you're gonna piss out the next day.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. The mindset needs to change for the whole community to change, really. And that
Yes,
may not never happen or may take a really long time to happen, but I believe that it's the mindset that needs to change of a whole race for us to really, see things differently and do things differently. But we're very capable of a
absolutely,
race, and we're very powerful, very strong, very authentic, and very leading of a race for sure.
absolutely.
So you've once said that you just want to see your kids grow up. What kind of legacy do you want to leave for them and for the people who see themselves in your story?
Well, I want to be somebody that they said the world was better because he lived.
Hmm.
As long as they say that, I'm good.
I love that. A simple and right to the point answer. I love that. Uh,
Yes.
what gives you hope when it comes to the future, especially for the next generation growing up in a similar circumstance?
Well, like you said, some of these kids are listening. You know, I do hear them. They do come up to me and say they listening.
I'm telling
Not
you.
not to the not to the point that I think they should, but I know if 10 listen and get it, it becomes like a disease, and it
Yes,
just keeps
sir.
spreading and keeps spreading and keeps spreading. And the mindset that we have right now will be totally obliterated. You know, with this violence, with I don't want to see you with nothing. If you got something, I'm going to take it from you. I think that all of that is going to disappear soon.
Wow.
And I want to be a part of getting rid of it.
There you go. I mean, you were once a part of what was not right, and now you're on the part of decide what it is right, and trying to be different. And I think that's a very commendable thing. Is that you're like, hey, I've lived this life, I've done all of this, I know what this is, and there's no way I'll go back to that. But there is a way that I'll lead everybody else the other way. So I think that's very
Absolutely.
commendable for sure. So as we wrap it up on the last question, I want to know one thing. So for someone listening who feels stuck, who feels like they've already made too many mistakes, what would you say to them?
Would only take 1 second to change who you are. You know, like you could right now say that I'm going to be a different person. You know, you could say I'm going to be a vegan, and in 1 second, if you stick to that, you become a vegan right then.
Yeah. So
You
you
could
just
say
gotta make
I'm no longer going to be a dummy. I'm going to get smart. And as soon as you say that, you become smart because you're supposed to start going after that you want out of life.
so it's safe to say you just gotta make that choice. You gotta wake up, make that choice, stop bullshitting around and wake up and make that choice to be different and do different.
Yeah, but I've had people tell me that they don't want to be different.
Wow. And what does that feel like for you when somebody says that?
Sad. It's sad that you don't want better for yourself.
And why do you think that is, that they don't want better for themselves? They think there's no better. Like you once said, you didn't know any better. You didn't know any other options. You didn't have any money to have access to these other things that inspired you to essentially want to do other things.
Well, if you like you said, if you don't know better, then you can't do better. So
Right.
what we got to do a better job of letting them know that there is better and that they can accomplish it.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate you coming on here, Ricky Ross. This was a wonderful talk, very inspiring talk. I never believed I'd be able to sit down with somebody like you that got so much game and knowledge and gems for the people. So I really appreciate it. I appreciate all you do.
I appreciate you too.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. Keep doing your thing, man. We need more young people like you to get out and put the word out.
Thank you, man. That means a lot to me. I hear that a lot, and that's my mission in life is to be a younger dude that leads the people to the water and hopefully that they drink. This is the For Good podcast. It's your guy JoJo Simmons, where we focus on the good, never the bad, where we're measured on what we do and not what we have. We out. Peace. Till next time. Thank you.
Peace.